Right now at 9, 3 people are dead, including a child, following a shooting and standoff last night in Baxter Springs. We'll have the latest from law enforcement. Plus, Bonne Terre police officer Lane Burns is laid to rest in Carthage. Also, after nearly 50 years of business, a staple on Joplin's west side is closing its doors. And
as the Russian invasion drags on, Ukrainians are risking their lives just to get to safety. I'm Jeff Paul in Lviv, Ukraine. I've got the details coming up.
You're watching the KOAM News at 9, and it starts right now. And thank you for joining us. I'm Chris Warner. We begin tonight with new information on a story we first brought you last night. 3 people are dead, including a 2-year-old child in Baxter Springs following an hours-long standoff with law enforcement. According to the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office, around 7:14 last night, Baxter Springs police officers were called to 340 Wyandotte Avenue. Now, the female caller told dispatch she needed help. When officers arrived, the woman exited the home and a male shot and killed her. She's been identified as 27-year-old Taylor Schutt. The shooter, 37-year-old Eli Crawford, went back into the home with their 2-year-old child. When Crawford returned to the home, he began shooting at law enforcement on scene, which included Cherokee County Sheriff's deputies. As he continued to shoot at law enforcement, additional help was called in from the Kansas Highway Patrol, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, and the Joplin SWAT team. Officials say the assault lasted nearly 3.5 hours before an officer was able to return fire. When officers entered the home, Eli and the child were found dead inside. The officer who returned fire has been placed on paid administrative leave per department protocol. The investigation is ongoing and being led by the KBI. Bonne Terre officer Lane Burns was laid to rest today in Carthage. Early Thursday morning, March 17, 2 patrolmen were ambushed, sparking an exchange of gunfire at a Motel 6 an hour south of St. Louis in Bonne Terre. Officer Lane Burns was killed. People lined the route today to pay their final respects to Officer Burns. He's a Carthage native and graduated from Carthage High School in 2009. 34-state weather. Sun came out for a bit, and it was a pinch warmer than yesterday. Nick Kelly joining us.
It certainly did help with temperatures, Chris, as we wrapped up the weekend today. Still looked good from earlier this evening at 7th and Rangeline, but the low was a bit cold. 39 this morning and topping out close to 60 across much of the area today. Some of us south and west of Joplin actually saw temperatures push into the lower, if not mid-60s this afternoon. But as far as where we go from here on out for the rest of the night, there's not a lot happening now on the Skywatch Storm Tracker. We don't have a lot of action on the surface map to show you right now, but I do want to point out, Doug and I are watching our next system out to the west. That's the one that's going to give us our next best shot for rain, thunderstorms, and maybe some severe weather, but we're going to hold off on that until we go into Tuesday, certainly Tuesday night. But in the short term, let's just say partly cloudy skies passing on throughout the course of the night, around 41. Joplin tops out near 69. Others will be in the mid to upper 60s for tomorrow, Chris. We'll time out when the thunderstorm chances will work in on Tuesday, coming up in a bit.
All right, Nick, thank you. Granny Schaefer's Family Restaurant will be closed after today. KOAM's Jalen Banks shares with us the last day of the beloved West Side restaurant.
March 27th, 2022 is just another Sunday for most people. But for Steve Schaefer and others, it will mark the end of a 49-year run. Granny Schaefer's on West 7th Street in Joplin opened its doors one final time. The Joplin staple first opened on April 1st, 1973, and was founded by Steve's mother and father, David and Karen Schaefer, and has been serving the community ever since. Steve shared that the decision to close the restaurant was due in part to growing prices and inflation.
Market reports I watch. Well, one of the ones I watch is eggs, of something we can't beat out. Extra large eggs jumped 93 cents a dozen. They went up basically 50% in one move. That's a $600 one item extra cost on food the decision was made before that even came out.
Steve credits the success of the restaurant not to himself, the family, or even the food, but to those that supported it.
Like I said, it's been a good run. I've had opportunity to have great customers and great employees over the years, because it would never work without them. You can't have a business, especially a hospitality industry business, where you don't have great customers and great employees to go together, and they were why I was successful.
Steve says that since the announcement, the community has shown immense support, and when asked what that meant to him, he started to fight back tears.
It means everything in the world. So, makes it all worth it.
Celebrating the half-century success of Granny Schaefer's. In Joplin, Jalen Banks, KOAM News.
Now, the restaurant had such a good turnout today that they started running out of food. The city of Joplin is inviting the public to provide feedback on the city's solid waste master plan. The city says it's in the initial stages of developing the plan and wants resident input to ensure its success. The discussions will include trash, recycling, and yard waste services in the city. An informational open house will be held this Wednesday, April the 6th, on the 5th floor of City Hall in the council chambers. There are 2 times available, from 2 to 4 p.m. or from 5 to 7 p.m. There's growing concern Poland will not be able to handle the influx of Ukrainian refugees trying to get away from the violence in their homeland. And there's no indication Russia will end its invasion of Ukraine anytime soon. Fox News correspondent Jeff Paul has more on the crisis in Ukraine from Lviv.
The desperate exodus from Ukraine shows no signs of letting up as a barrage of Russian strikes continues to hit the outskirts of the capital city of Kyiv. An oil factory in Lviv was hit by Russian missiles on Saturday, destroying multiple oil tanks and causing a massive fire. Many Ukrainians are continuing to seek refuge in Poland. According to the United Nations, more than 3.6 million have fled the country. President Biden met with some of those refugees for the first time in Poland on Saturday, delivering a message of support to those fleeing the violence.
We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principle, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
President Biden's condemnation of Russian President Vladimir Putin was warmly welcomed by many Ukrainian refugees.
I agree with President Biden because I think that Putin is a terrible person. He's killer. It's fact. And such person cannot rule any country.
Following the president's remarks, Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the president is not trying to call for the removal of Russian President Vladimir Putin. In Lviv, Ukraine, Jeff Paul, Fox News.
Now, since that comment by President Biden, other U.S. officials spoke out, including a top-ranking Republican on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee who urged the president to stay on script. And we take this time now to honor one of our many four-state heroes. Tech Sergeant Charles Kaufman served in the Army during World War II, where he received the Purple Heart in addition to a number of other medals and commendations. His hometown, Neosho. We're proud to recognize Tech Sergeant Charles Kaufman, tonight's four-state hero. And of course, learn more about other heroes or nominate one of your own. You can do that at KOAMNewsNow.com. After the forecast, Uber has been granted a 30-month license to continue operating in London.
It was nice to wrap up the weekend on a quiet note, even though it was a bit chilly for some of you. At least the numbers weren't too terrible as we pop up the numbers from Joplin Regional over the past 36 hours. We did see highs top out right around 60 during the 5 o'clock hour yesterday afternoon. Then we took a dip into the upper 30s, lower 40s this morning, and topping back out in the upper 50s this afternoon. Some of you in even the lower 60s, especially out in northeastern Oklahoma. As far as where we go from here, though, staying quiet and mild, you can even argue a bit warm, certainly for Monday, but especially for Tuesday, ahead of our next storm system. That's a system that we need to watch closely because we have a good shot for thunderstorms with that and maybe a potential severe threat as well. And we'll be briefly chilly once we get on the backside of that system, while we also dry out by about Thursday. That's at least the short term of how we look going through the rest of the week ahead. And you can see from outside, 7th and range line, we had quiet skies all day, but high cloud cover at times, sure. But that didn't stop you in northeast Oklahoma going into the lower to middle 60s this afternoon. Everybody else not too terrible, mainly upper 50s to about 60 degrees. And these numbers have taken a bit of a dip. You can see just before we hit the top of the 9 o'clock hour, we had temperatures mainly between the mid 40s and lower 50s across the board. But I think it's going to be kind of a brisk night for some of you with mid 30s and some of you near 40 going into tonight and tomorrow morning. But even though the radar suggested we had some showers working across central and eastern part parts of Missouri. I took the drive from 44 home back to here today, so I can verify that none of that reached the ground. So the entire region stayed dry to wrap up this weekend. We got a stationary front out to the south and west. That'll come in on Tuesday to push us well into the 70s. Then we got this cold front. This doesn't come into play until Tuesday night or Wednesday once this upper level low kicks out of the Pacific and starts heading our way. But in the short term, we're starting to get underneath a quick little upper level ridge, so that is going to mean warmer temperatures, thankfully, back in the picture starting tomorrow. We just have to get past kind of a cool, if not cold night for many of you. Just seeing partly cloudy skies coming and going throughout the course of the night. Maybe some mid to upper 30s for parts of southeast Kansas, mainly lower 40s elsewhere for the rest of the region. But look at how nice we warm up throughout the day tomorrow. Mid to upper 60s at the very least, certainly some lower 70s possible. I think the hand tracker is acting up a bit again, Chris. We'll break down the planner again in the next half hour here, but if I can, I want to try and recenter that map a little bit. If you could pardon me for a few moments, folks. I want to get the map recentered once again. It's acting up a little bit. How do you like that? Let's try this way.
Nice in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Not too bad up to the north.
Okay, I figured this out. So let's talk about Tuesday. We know we're dry and good for tomorrow, but here's Tuesday, at least mid, if not upper 70s, dry for much of the day. But look at by 8 o'clock. These scattered storms popping up, some of these could certainly be strong and severe. They're going to try to start sneaking in by 10 o'clock Tuesday night, and then just growing coverage and push on through the region as we go through Tuesday overnight and into Wednesday morning. And a quick note about that, there's a low severe threat with that, mainly across our corners of Kansas and Oklahoma. Let's keep an eye on those storms between 8 o'clock tomorrow, make that Tuesday evening until about 4 a.m. Wednesday. Thinking most of the threats will be mainly pretty low, hail, wind, and tornadoes. But I think we'll just get a lot of rain out of this, and that will continue into Wednesday. 69 tomorrow, 76 on Tuesday. We'll call it an alert day, but you could argue an alert evening based on how those storms want to play out. Then quickly to 54 Thursday, then mainly mild going into next weekend, Chris.
I'm looking forward to next weekend, but I am ready for storm season, so hopefully they don't get too out of hand.
So far, Tuesday doesn't look like it, but it's a system that Doug, Michael, and I will be watching very closely for everybody.
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you so much. Coming up, how the war in Ukraine is impacting tourism in Cuba. Uber has been granted a 30-month license to continue operating in London. This brings an end to a long-running battle with city regulators over whether the ride-hailing app was considered fit and proper. The government agency Transport for London had revoked Uber's license twice in London. In 2017, 2019, authorities have been concerned about the company's ability to keep its passengers safe. Uber then won an 18-month London permit in court. The ride service, based in San Francisco, has added new safety features to its platform and reached a deal to formally recognize Britain's labor union so its members could work as drivers. London is Uber's largest market in Europe. Tourism in Cuba is facing a major decline as Russia's war in Ukraine keeps Russian tourists away. After 2 years of steep falls in tourism, largely due to former President Trump's tight sanctions on Cuba keeping U.S. tourists out amid the COVID-19 pandemic, the island is once again trying to recover from another hit. Cuba is facing an unexpected fallout due to Russia's invasion into Ukraine. Thousands of Russian tourists have canceled their plans to travel after Russian forces invaded Ukraine nearly 4 weeks ago, leaving beaches across Cuba quite empty during a typically busy season. Millions of Americans might get shocked if they're counting on big refunds by one item in their tax filings. After last year's unemployment aid, where many got an additional $300 per week in the American Rescue Plan money, several might have assumed this income was already taxed. But it wasn't. Recipients needed to set the withholdings themselves by filing a W-4 or opting in quarterly payments to the IRS to avoid the tax charge at the end of the year. Those who didn't might see a reduction in their refund this year. According to the Century Foundation, nearly 25 million people received those benefits in 2021. White House announced plans to unveil a 20% minimum tax on Monday that would increase taxes on the nation's top earners as part of the Biden administration's 2023 budget plan. Fox News correspondent Alexandria Hoff has more from Washington.
This billionaire tax proposal would impact households worth more than $100 million, so the top 0.01% of Americans. According to the White House, it sets a 20% tax rate floor and, by their own calculations, would reduce the federal deficit by $1 trillion and could raise up to $360 billion over 10 years. But we are not just talking about income being taxed. What has piqued the interest of the ultra-wealthy has been that this proposal also targets unrealized gains, such as an increase in the value of a stock that one holds. This idea was first brought up as a way to fund President Biden's Fallen Build Back Better plan. Here's Senator Lindsey Graham back in October.
Unrealized gain is what they're trying to get, and that could have a ripple effect for the stock market. So if you impose a tax on unrealized gain, people may get out of the stock market and go to other assets that would be harder to levy a tax on.
In the fall, Elon Musk also issued a strong response. Remember, he polled his Twitter followers asking if he should sell off 10% of Tesla stock. They voted yes, so he did it, later saying that selling stock is one of the ways that he pays his tax bills. Musk also warned on Twitter that this taxing of unrealized gains could creep down to the middle class, writing, "Eventually they run out of other people's money and then they come for you." According to the New York Post, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had reportedly called this previous attempt to pass a billionaire's tax a publicity stunt. In 2018, her personal financial disclosure put her net worth at $118 million. In Washington, Alexandria Hoff, Fox News.
Still ahead, baby boomers might be the ones held most responsible for climate change. Baby boomers might be the ones held most responsible for climate change, according to a new study. Scientists at a university in Norway say baby boomers are the biggest contributors to climate change. Researchers surveyed older adults in 32 countries and found people over 60 accounted for 25% of greenhouse gas emissions in 2005, and it increased to a 33% by 2015. The study says seniors use wealth to maintain high consumption and emit more greenhouse gases. Analysts found seniors in the U.S. and Australia generate the most emissions, twice the average European elder. I'm sorry, I can't help but think of what kind of greenhouse gases they're emitting and that they're doing more of. Okay. That's just me. I'm a young guy, and I found that story interesting. Another story that's interesting. A new study says the quality of the air in your children take in, it could be causing a downturn in their mental health. Now, researchers at the University of Denver say ozone and air pollution could surge depression symptoms in children, even in areas with acceptable air quality standards. Scientists studied children ages 9 to 13 over 4 years and found those who lived in an area with high ozone levels showed a notable increase in depressive signs. The analysts say symptoms may include inflammation, persistent feelings of sadness, difficulty with concentration, sleep problems, and even suicidal thoughts. Shanghai will implement a new lockdown for mass COVID-19 testing. Eastern half of the city will stay at home for 4 days starting Monday. The rest of Shanghai will go into lockdown starting Friday. No one will be allowed to leave their residences, and public transportation in those areas will be suspended. New measure comes as state health officials in China reported more than 5,500 locally transmitted COVID-19 cases on Saturday. It was the second consecutive day with more than 5,000 cases. Nearly half of them were in Shanghai. Current daily infections in the city are the highest reported since the pandemic began. Biden administration is expected to give Americans over 50 the option to have a second COVID booster shot. New York Times is reporting that decision could come as early as next week. The FDA's Vaccine Advisory Committee was expected to consider the additional booster shot proposal on April 6th, but new data from Israel provides new evidence that a fourth coronavirus vaccine offers enhanced protection against severe illness. Experts say technically a fourth dose is currently available for anyone who says they need one because they're immunocompromised. The action by the White House would not amount to an official second booster recommendation, but would give everyone over 50 the option. We're going to wrap up this half hour of the News at 9 with a story on how some elementary students near Atlanta surprised their beloved custodian from Ukraine. Some elementary students near Atlanta surprising their beloved custodian who's from Ukraine. Lena Gashenko is a U.S. citizen and has worked at Oak Hill Elementary for 21 years, but she has dozens of family members in Ukraine. So, in a show of support, students drew sunflowers for her, which are a symbol of hope in Ukraine. They also put up a blue and yellow Ukrainian flag with the message, "We love you, Mrs. Lena." She said when she saw what the children had done for her, she started crying. In another area of the school, there was a large sign with a rainbow that included the names of Gushenko's family members in Ukraine. Now, I'm more in touch with my emotions than most people, so that's getting to me too. I think that's a great story. We've got 30 more minutes of news, weather, and sports coming your way. Up first, a memorial ceremony was held at a plane crash site in China today. Plus, a key federal regulation agency targets one Russian company as a national security threat. Welcome back. A memorial ceremony was held at a plane crash site in China on Sunday as search and rescue teams placed flowers and hold a moment of silence for the victims on board the plane. A China Eastern 737-800 was carrying 132 people on board when it suddenly plummeted 29,000 feet to the ground. The cause of the crash remains a mystery at this time. China Eastern has grounded all of their Boeing 737-800s as a precaution while the investigation is ongoing. The crash is the worst air disaster that has happened in China in 28 years. A key federal regulation agency targets one Russian company as a national security threat. The Federal Communications Commission says Kaspersky Labs poses an unacceptable risk to U.S. national security. Now, Kaspersky is the first Russian company added to a list of national threats. U.S. companies can't use any federal FCC subsidy funds to purchase Kaspersky products or services. Kaspersky says the FCC's decision is political because the Russia-Ukraine war. Business said they are willing to collaborate with U.S. agencies over any security concerns. The parents of a teen who fell to his death from a Florida amusement park ride have hired attorneys. Carolina Cardona spoke to ride experts and witnesses about what happened.
Tonight, Orlando's Icon Park freefall ride remains closed as investigators continue to look for answers surrounding the death of Tyree Sampson.
The focus of this investigation is going to be on the training of the staff on the ground who may not have secured Tyree before the ride took off.
Investigators have not determined what caused Sampson to fall out of the ride, but in viral video that shows Sampson's fall and is too graphic to show, workers can be heard in the moments after discussing safety measures.
What are you doing? I don't know. Did you check it? Yeah, the safety van's under. The light was on. Yeah. You guys are sure you checked it? Yeah, the light was on.
Attorney Bob Hilliard, who is representing the family, spoke with us about the legal actions being taken to find who is responsible for the death of the 14-year-old boy.
The investigation is also going to include the design of the ride itself. There absolutely should be no way a ride can leave the ground if there is any indication that any one of the passengers is not secured.
The company that operates this ride says workers are responsible for checking lights on the restraint system to ensure they are properly secured.
The ride will not ascend unless those harnesses are locked in. And, again, so there were no indications that there was anything.
My first reaction, it felt like a dream.
We spoke with Montre Williams, one of the witnesses from Thursday night. He says he was standing in front of the ride the night of Tyree's death and noticed the red flags.
Nobody walked around to see if everybody was securely, locked in.
And there has to be redundancies. It has to be more than a 16-year-old minimum wage kid walking around checking whether or not your harness works.
Now, the ride passed a safety inspection in December before it was allowed to open. The White House is in cleanup mode following comments by President Biden. Now, Mr. Biden ended his trip to Europe yesterday with a fiery speech in Warsaw, Poland, where he declared Russian President Vladimir Putin, quote, cannot remain in power. Now, the White House, the Secretary of State, and other officials all walking that back. Senior national correspondent Rich Edson is at the White House with the latest.
A quiet day for President Biden at the White House. He returned here around 2 o'clock in the morning from a 3-day trip to Europe. His trip ended with a major speech in Warsaw and a lasting declaration that Russian President Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power. That needed a major clarification from the White House and top administration officials. Traveling in Israel, Secretary of State Antony Blinken stressed the massive Western sanctions campaign is not designed to push Putin from power.
President Putin cannot be empowered to wage war or engage in aggression against Ukraine or anyone else. As you know, and as you've heard us say repeatedly, we do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia.
This clarification follows confusion over the White House position on a response to potential chemical weapons use or the purpose of sanctions, though critics argue the president muddled the American message at a time when there should be more sensitivity and clarity coming from the U.S. government.
There was a horrendous gaffe right at the end of it. I wish he would stay on script. Whoever wrote that speech did a good job for him, but my gosh, I wish they would keep him on script. I think most people who don't deal in the lane of foreign relations don't realize that those 9 words that he uttered would cause the kind of eruption that they did.
President Biden also met with Ukrainian refugees in Europe, where he called Putin a butcher. The White House announced $1 billion in humanitarian aid as this war drives Ukrainians to nearby countries. The U.S. also announced it's going to provide more natural gas to Europe, as European countries are heavily dependent on Russian oil and gas. At the White House, Rich Edson, Fox News.
Later, a car crashes into a home in Florida and it's all caught on camera.
All right, I took the time to refresh the machines. Well, we should be good to go. So if you missed a breakdown of the forecast, let's just dive right in once again. Yes, knock on wood indeed, Chris, but so far it's working now so good. Still showing the 36-hour trend here, showing temperatures topping out near 60 at the very least yesterday afternoon. A dip into the upper 30s and lower 40s this morning. But even though we had a little bit of cloud cover earlier today, we kept things dry to wrap up the weekend and just a bit on the chilly side. Most of us in the upper 50s this afternoon. As far as what we look from 7th and range line, make that how we look, we're still looking good. It's dark, but it's quiet, and with cloud cover still coming and going, that's going to be the overall theme as we go throughout the rest of the night. But look at how temperatures fared this morning. Around the Joplin area, you were right around 40 degrees. We had some mid to upper 30s in our far northern counties, lower 40s elsewhere. But everybody warmed up nicely today, even with the mid 50s on the board in our northern counties. That was certainly a good warm up compared to how we started this morning out. We even had some lower to mid 60s on the board in our corner of northeastern Oklahoma. But everybody has seen these numbers drop back into the upper 40s and the lower 50s back at the top of this hour. So we are going to see these numbers continue to drop off. I'm thinking most of us between the mid 30s and lower 40s tonight, but at least we're dry, even though the cloud cover continues to build on top of us. We have a stationary front parked just to the south and west. This is going to come through on Tuesday as a warm front to make sure we go into the 70s. While that may sound nice for Tuesday, that passing front is going to be quickly followed by this cold front that hasn't even made it on shore yet, but that's the next front with our next best shot for rain and storms come Tuesday and Wednesday, but it doesn't come near us until we get this upper low out of the Pacific. So in the short term, we'll just enjoy a few days with the upper level ridge in charge. That will make sure we warm things up starting tomorrow. We just got to get past another cold night for some, cool for others. Certainly in southeastern Kansas and our northwestern counties, you can see mid to upper 30s by tomorrow morning. Everybody else in the lower 40s. But everybody warms up nicely, certainly by the noon hour, and pushing into at very least the mid to upper 60s across much of the area. So 41 in the morning for Joplin, 58 by noon, highs near 69. I think we can do that with the south wind eventually coming around at 5 to 15 miles per hour. A look at Tuesday shows the clouds building in ahead of that next storm system, but nothing to speak of throughout much of the day. In fact, we'll go even warmer, mid to maybe upper 70s come Tuesday afternoon. But here's 8 o'clock. We see these widely scattered storms popping up just to the west. This is what we'll have to keep an eye on as we head toward 10 o'clock Tuesday night. And then what happens as we go through the overnight Wednesday morning? More moisture gets pulled in. We'll see eventually a line of showers and storms come on through, and stick around with us for Wednesday morning. And some of these could be strong to severe. So we got a low severe threat for our least our corners of Kansas and Oklahoma from 8 o'clock Tuesday evening till 4 a.m. Wednesday. A conditional threat for tornadoes, large hail, high winds, mainly low threats, but I think we'll see quite a bit of rain out of this just within that stretch of time alone up until about 1 o'clock Wednesday afternoon. Half an inch to an inch and a half, but I think before the system is all said and done, we could see maybe 1 to 2 inches of rain before everything clears out on Wednesday. 69 tomorrow, 76 Tuesday, 65 early afternoon highs Wednesday, then we'll drop into the 40s late afternoon, Chris, but Dry Thursday with highs of 54. We'll watch for a few showers Friday and Saturday, but mainly mild, thankfully, going into next weekend.
I'm looking forward again to that weekend. Don't mind the storm chances as long as they don't get too rowdy, but I do not like dropping from the 60s to the 40s in the middle of the day.
It's a brief cool down, but we'll save that cold for long.
That's a good thing. Nick, thank you so much. Coming up in sports, the MIAA released the outdoor track and field preseason coaches poll. We've got the details. Plus, Pitt State baseball goes for the series sweep against Fort Hays State. Danny Terzer's got those highlights and more next.
This is the Toyota Sunday Night Sports Feed. Pitt State baseball is 12-3 in MIAA play this season. Another conference win is up for grabs today. PSU closes out a series with Fort Hays State. The Gorillas have dominated the series so far, winning 14-1 and 10-5. In the finale, Pitt down by 2. Cruz Aranda singles up the middle. Jordan Maxson scores. Later, 5th inning tie game, Garrett McGowan hits one to shallow left. Mason Hartman slides into home. Next batter, Maxson, goes the same way. That brings McGowan in. Gorillas lead 4-2. Later, Fort Hays retakes the lead. It's 5-4 here. Hartman draws a bases-loaded walk. That's the tying run. Bases still loaded here. McGowan, he's the guy you want, all the way back to the wall in right. All 3 guys on base score. McGowan reaches second. Jordan Mendenhall finishes the job. He gets the save, and Pitt State wins 8-5. Missouri Southern finishes up a series with Emporia State today. Southern won the first 2 games, but in the finale, they fall in extras 3-2. The Lions took a 2-0 lead in the 5th off an error and an RBI single from Henry Kuziak, but the Hornets came back to tie it up, and then they won it with a walk-off single in the 10th. Southern moves to 9-7 in conference play. The outdoor track and field season is already underway, and on Friday, the MIAA released the coaches poll. Here's how the rankings shake out. On the men's side, no surprise here, unanimous decision. Pittsburgh State takes the top spot. The Gorillas are the defending outdoor champs, and they've won 7 of the last 9 MIAA outdoor championships. Missouri Southern ties for second place. Last year, the men finished as the runners-up to Pitt State. The Gorillas lock up first on the women's side as well. In 2021, the Pitt State women finished 3rd at the outdoor championships, but they've won 5 of the last 6, and they lead the MIAA with 12 total outdoor titles. Also, just last month, they won the MIAA Indoor Championship. And the Missouri Southern women are picked to finish 5th. Elite 8 games wrap up today in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. The Jayhawks hit the floor in the earlier game today. It's Kansas and Miami fighting for a spot in the Final Four. First half, Christian Brown throws down the one-handed dunk. Later, Cameron McGusty hits the pull-up jumper. Hurricanes with a 6-point lead at half. Second half, though, here come the Jayhawks. David McCormick gets the rebound, then the bucket and one. Then Ochai Agbaji misses the layup here, but it's kicked back out to him for a second chance 3. He nails it. He's got 18 points in the game. Kansas leads by double digits. 3 minutes to go. Remy Martin finds Mitch Lightfoot. Kansas dominates the second half to win 76-50.
Lid was going to come off eventually, but that was an impressive start of the second half to go from down 6 to tie it in 2 minutes, and then get control of it right after that. So it was nothing anyone said. It was just these guys went out and did it. We had about 2 good plays turned into 4, which turned into 8, which turned into 16. That was about as well as we could play the second half, and these guys earned it. So proud of them, proud for our program. And
Arkansas hit the floor against Duke in the Elite 8 on Saturday. The Blue Devils end the Razorback season winning 78-69. Jalen Williams led Arkansas with 19 points and 10 rebounds, his 16th double-double of the season. Williams and J.D. Notae were named to the NCAA West Regional All-Tournament team. The Razorbacks finished the season 28-9 overall and make their second straight Elite Eight appearance.
We didn't end the half very well at all, Scotty, and I thought that, really hurt us. We took 3 free throws in the first half. When we got to the line, we didn't miss. That's our game. I mean, we're one of the best in the country, and I didn't think we settled tonight at all. So they did a great job, I guess, on verticality.
The NCAA Tournament Final Four is set. The games are scheduled for Saturday, April 2nd in New Orleans. In the first game of the evening, number 1 Kansas meets number 2 Villanova. That tips off at 5:09 on TBS. Then Duke hits the floor against North Carolina. These teams split in the regular season, but it's the first time the rivals meet in NCAA tournament history. It should be a great one. Game time is set for Saturday at 7:49. That's it for sports. Up next, a car crashes into a home in Florida.
A home security camera caught a car crashing into a home on camera Saturday in Jacksonville. 3 people were injured, 2 in the car and 1 a resident who was sitting in her front yard. Bree Isom has the story.
Definitely a big wake-up call. I've been out here for 33 years.
Neighbors are in shock after seeing a car crash into a home Saturday afternoon on 25th Street in Grand Park. You could see the car swerving down 25th Street before crashing into the home. Multiple neighbors say the car was swerving because the passenger took control of the wheel during an argument. You could see the car then barrels off the road into this home.
I just heard a big kaboom. My mind was just everywhere because I don't know, it could have been a child, anyone, but the person who stayed here, I noticed that they always sit in their front yard all day, every day. So, I just ran over here to make sure they was okay.
The speed limit down 25th Street is 30 miles per hour, but neighbors say cars drive faster than that. Neighbors say they wish there were speed bumps up and down the street. JFRD says 3 people were transported to the hospital. Neighbors say the driver and passenger of the car were transported. Neighbors say a woman was outside in a lawn chair during this crash. You could see her shadow as the car comes toward the home. Multiple neighbors tell us that woman is recovering in the hospital.
Thankfully, despite what you saw, none of the injuries reported to be life-threatening. The Red Cross is helping the family in the home find temporary housing until repairs can be made. Jacksonville police are continuing their investigation into the crash and can't say whether any charges may be filed yet. We'll be right back. Wildlife officials in East Tennessee captured and relocated this 500-pound black bear. Take a look. The bear was known to dig through garbage, bird feeders, and pet food around the campus of Tusculum University for years. But recently, the bear has become more active and has been increasingly damaging property around the area. Officials with Tennessee's Wildlife Resources Agency and the Greenville Fire Department helped tranquilize the bear on Thursday. Crews then relocated the bear to a remote area of the Cherokee National Forest. So thankfully they were able to get him out to a place where it was a little bit safer. Kiara, if you saw a 500-pound bear roaming around campus, what would you do? Play dead. Play dead. I've heard that works. I've also heard, duck and cover seems to protect against a lot of things.
Let's hope that works.
We're going to try one of those things. If we see a bear around here, it's what we're doing. If you see a bear, call the authorities because they're kind of dangerous. That's our time for now, though. We'll see you back here next weekend. Thanks for making us part of your night.